Tommy, remind us when the recording will be available.
It's usually 2 or 3 days, so probably by the end of this week.
So we had a guest who was going to bring lunch, but then when the time changed, he couldn't make it. So he promised to bring lunch and watch the recording with us.
Well, and also a note that it will be up, since it's running live on Facebook, it'll be available on our Facebook page for Capital City Village immediately afterwards. And we'll have it up on YouTube by the end of the week.
Right.
Welcome, Brother Honeycutt. We're delighted you could wake up by now.
Well, I just did. Thank you. I was asleep this morning, Tom. Hey.
Glad you could join us.
Thank you. There's more.
Susan.
It's 2:20 there.
Just to remind everybody, once Tommy begins the program, if you would mute yourself, that is always helpful, and then unmute when we get to the question session. A couple of announcements while we're waiting. This is being recorded, as you're aware. She will talk for 20 or 25 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions. We have a hard stop at about 5 minutes to 2. But if there are remaining questions, I'll either try to answer them, or much more likely, I will get what the questions are and check with her later and be able to deliver you an answer. So we don't want anybody from CCV not getting the full all their questions answered.
Yeah, and thanks again for your patience. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes for our speaker to come on. And thanks again for giving us some of your time this afternoon. A couple of other quick notes, since we do have your attention. We do have some other great programs coming up. Capital City Village is hosting another installment of our Writers Series this coming Sunday, the 25th at 2 p.m. An author from Chicago who's affiliated with DePaul University. His name is Miles Harvey. He's a good friend of our family. We've known him for years, and he's just a really smart guy. He's written some great nonfiction books, mainly historical ones. And so he'll talk a little bit about that, about the writing process and the writer's life, so to speak. So that's, again, this Sunday at 2 p.m. And we'll have some other great programs coming up. So please check our calendar page. And if you have any questions, please contact the office.
And we're delighted that anybody who's not a member, which a number of you are not, have joined us. We hope you'll look at our calendar, go on our website and see events, and join us for other events. And last but not least, November 10th is our 10th anniversary, and not Kay's and my 10th, but the organization 10th birthday. So we would, now then we would impress upon you the importance of attending that and joining us, which is a fundraiser. I would put that up front. That's November the 10th. That's a Wednesday.
Tom, I love your cat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gail.
I was just watching Kay and the cat, and I find it very soothing. Beautiful cat.
Well, and while we're putting in plugs for our events, we should also mention that the 6th annual golf tournament is set for October 2nd, and that'll be at Riverside Golf Course with, I believe, an 8 a.m. start. Maybe that's
9 o'clock. 8 a.m. registration, 9 o'clock start.
Thank you.
More humane in the start time.
So we're going to have information on our website for that as well pretty soon.
And even before that, on Thursday, we have our first Coffee A Go-Go at Mozart's, assuming it doesn't rain. So anybody that would like to show up for that, we'll try to Zoom it also if I can get on Mozart's Wi-Fi, but would love to see people in person. We're hoping to get a table out under the trees and enjoy some fresh air and camaraderie.
Yep. What time is it, Rick?
9:30. about an hour, 9:30, 10:30, something like that. There is, if you need help getting down the steps, there is a lift, and I'm actually going to go over there this afternoon and make sure the lift is working.
Good. Hopefully Dr. Watts will approve because it's out of doors.
Right.
And it might be very uplifting.
Oh.
Yeah, I said it's under the trees. That kind of implied it was outdoors, Mark.
All right, folks, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I noticed a couple of new faces on here. So for those that are not familiar with Capital City Village, we are a local nonprofit and we work with seniors in the community, providing a mix of programs and services to help them age in their own homes for as long as possible. So we do a lot of different services, including driving, so a lot of transportation, some small home fix-its, a huge amount of technology help this last year. And Rick, you were really fantastic and instrumental in making that work for us. And then a lot of programs, a lot of them are socially geared, like our coffee gatherings, et cetera. But a lot of it is really these really informational programs like this one today. So please do check our calendar section of our website. There's a lot of really good information there. And if you have any questions about Capital City Village, either what we're about, what we can do in the community, or how you can be a part of it, please contact the office. That number is 512-524-2709. And again, we're just going to wait a couple of minutes here for Dr. Walks, and we will get started. But thanks again for joining us.
Where's Sarah?
Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
There she is. Hi, Sarah.
I believe Dr. Walks is joining. Hi there, everyone. I believe Dr. Walks is joining us now, so we'll give her a couple of seconds to get settled before we throw her into the arena. And so we'll just hold on just another minute or so, please.
If we need a filler, Kay will start to rub the cat right in front of everybody. This is Tom. Yes. Tommy, where did you send the meeting link for Dr. Walks? She's just finished her previous stint.
Sure, I had emailed it to the same link that you had first contacted her on, or maybe Henry had contacted her on.
It was what, last Friday, I believe.
Let's see.
Why don't you send her another link? That would just make life.
And
would
just
that work for you? Yes.
Desmar.walks@austintexas.gov.
At the austintexas.gov site. Yeah, it should come within a second or six, kind of thing.
Right, it's on its way.
Yeah, one of our group was saying they'd seen you on Spectrum at noon today, so it's harassing. I told them you had to be a little more composed to go on TV than to be running behind and run into a patient's room and try to listen to their chief complaint. But yeah, do you send it already, Tommy?
It's on its way. Mm-hmm.
Now that's to her, not to me.
Correct. I just copied everyone, but I sent it to the austintexas.gov.
Oh, yes, when you sign on, you'll see our executive director smiling at you, and then and you'll see myself and my wife petting the cat and a few things like that.
It's glad to see you smiling, Tom.
Okay, great. Thank you. She's almost with us.
Great. Thank you, Tom.
I want a bigger picture of the cat.
Yes, ma'am.
Hold him up.
We will. But
there we go. There we go.
Okay. If you don't mind, everybody kind of mute up and we'll get started here. Ooh, gosh, didn't realize how far behind me.
There we go. All right, so Dr. Walks is coming on. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate your patience. If you could please mute, we're going to leave it up to Dr. Tom McCourse to introduce Dr. Walks, and we'll have time for questions, whatever questions we don't get, because I understand that Dr. Walks' schedule is naturally very busy. We'll do a hard stop at about 5 minutes before the hour. If there are some remaining questions, we'll hold this space open and we can discuss those. Or if there's follow-up, you're welcome to contact us. All right, so Dr. McCourse, if you would go ahead with the introduction.
Very good. Well, again, welcome in your horrendous day, Desmar.
Hi.
There you go. We're glad to see you in our own living. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to quickly say Dr. Walks is coming to us via UTMB Medical School, Baylor College of Medicine for her residency. And to my opinion, the most important thing is 25 years practicing family medicine, as well as taking care of the underserved and even some mission medicine. So she comes with a very pragmatic background to this job. She joined the Austin Public Health from the Bastrop Public Health Authority less than 2 months ago. So we will let you run with it, and then I will kind of, if we have time for some questions, we will take those and do those, but when your time runs out, we'll continue and accumulate the questions, and I'll take advantage of your nice offer to let us communicate with you later. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me this afternoon and giving me the opportunity to talk to you one-on-one about our situation with regards to COVID-19. This has been quite a year, or actually 18 months, for all of our medical providers in our area and for all of our citizens. It's changed our lives in ways that I'm sure we've yet to discover. And initially we were dealing with a virus that was novel, as they said. It started not on our shores initially, we think, and came here unexpected. We kind of thought, I think we felt that we were going to be able to keep it from impacting our population because we'd done such a great job with keeping Ebola from being a problem, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. So we've ended up in a situation now where it's a day-to-day learning curve. It's relying on resources from all segments of the population. We're looking to medicine. We're using population health statisticians and demographers, and we've employed the help of data engineers and volunteers just rolling up their sleeves, delivering food and helping those who aren't able to help themselves. And in a way, that Chinese symbol for crisis being danger and opportunity has never more aptly been demonstrated as it's been demonstrated in our community and in our country and in this world, as we really realize that we are a global society and we do rely on each other. And that in order to get through this crisis, we'll need to capitalize on everybody's strengths and to help lift up everybody in their weakness. The initial thoughts that I have to share with you are that the pandemic has really required a lot of thinking outside the box. When we as physicians first were faced with treating this disease, we didn't know what to use. And many of us have been doing this a long time, and we're used to algorithms in the new way of doing things in medicine. And for those of us that are old enough to remember that it's an art and a science, we use those tools as well. So this came on the heels of great scientific advances, and we were left trying to figure out how to deal with it. So it's been challenging to watch people come into the office who heretofore you'd look at them and think, oh, that's just maybe a COPD exacerbation, a lung problem that's gone bad and people are short of breath. Come to find out they had this virus that really makes them feel like they're choking to death. And the real severity of the disease is not often seen by those who are just in outpatient practice, but it is seen most acutely by those who are in our hospitals. And I start there because we need to really take stock of the fact that we have a group of men and women who've been working for the last 18 months to try to get people through a disease that can last, in some cases, in severe instances, 4 to 6 weeks in hospital. And so we have a population of providers who are battle worn, to say the least. As we look at what we're dealing with right now, we just came through a period of relative calm. We had our numbers decreasing, and we were all talking about getting back to our quote unquote new normal. And then due to the fact that we've had challenges with getting our population vaccinated, this virus has had a chance to find some bodies to live in and to figure out how to be a little bit better about staying alive and thriving. And that's what we're referring to when we talk about mutations. Mutations can't happen unless the virus has an opportunity to infect a person. And during that infection, it can at times maybe miss a code or miss a step and change the way it behaves in human beings. So that's what we now have. You've heard a lot of talk about variants, and the strong shall survive, as is a saying that goes on in virology as well. And so we have a Delta variant now in our community that is able to infect more easily because it spreads easily. And it spreads more easily, so it infects more people. And so we now have a situation where our relative calm has turned into another surge. So you'll be hearing in the coming days, and you've heard, I'm sure already, that we are elevating our guidance back to pre-stage 2, stage 3 norms, because we want people to protect themselves. How many of you who are listening to me have had a flu shot in the past and still got the flu? Yeah, me too. And so that's my example to say that, you know, we do our best to try to get the best coverage and protection for people when we make these vaccines. And in this case, our vaccines were 95, 94% effective at protecting against developing disease, severe disease, hospitalization, and death. And now we have a variant that wasn't around when we were developing the vaccines last year. So we have now a situation where our vaccines still work at protecting us from severe disease, hospitalization, and death, but they are not quite as good at protecting us from getting mild disease, which is why I'm calling for people who are vaccinated to wear a mask. We've seen this past year that when we had our vaccines for the flu, going back to that analogy, and we wore a mask, we had very, very few cases of the flu. And that is my great example for why I'm asking you at this point in time. even though you're vaccinated, to please wear a mask as well for that extra level of protection. We have an opportunity to really work through this problem as we do everything that we're faced with as people. Most of us have lived long enough. We've seen lots of things come and go. We've had our struggles and our challenges along the way. And this is no different than that, in that we just need to have the resolve to do what it takes to get to the other side of it. And part of that resolve is going to have to be that we protect ourselves and our families by choosing to be vaccinated, and in so doing prevent becoming severely ill and requiring hospitalization, and also by wearing a mask to prevent spreading. We've got about 250,000 souls out here who have not been vaccinated yet. If you know any of them, please encourage them to go get that shot or those shots, because they need both for full protection. And you know, we still have the ability as people with gray hair. I've got some that I dye regularly under all of this. We still have the advantage of people thinking that we're smart and wise. So I need you to be my ambassadors to go out into the community and tell people to please put the mask back on. Nobody wants to wear it, nobody. But we need the resolve. We put people on the moon. We developed this vaccine safely by figuring out how to work cooperatively with other countries and with many, many amazing, brilliant scientists. We've kept people alive. You know, we have fewer deaths here in Austin, Texas than many parts of the world. And we can do this. And our next challenge is going to be going forward once we get past this surge, to figure out how we reach out to our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, because about 2% of our world population outside of the United States is vaccinated, and we're world leaders and part of the, you know, to whom much is given, much is required. So at some point, when we put our own mask on and get our folks, not in the airplane analogy, but in the virus analogy, put our own mask on, get our shots done, I anticipate that we will be continue to be world leaders and help our fellow man. So with that, I'll stop and entertain any questions.
Sure. Let me ask a couple of questions, and then we'll open to things. Can you specifically address, are we seniors at a substantially higher risk, or has basically, as you've implied, just being vaccinated still keeps us 95% safe? And then you might address the idea of whether this, in my mind, pie in the sky of the booster shot is anything in the future. Is it real? Address that if you would, because that has to do with senior immunity a lot.
Yeah. So the good news is that in the cases that we've seen in our seniors in the long-term care facilities, we've had one hospitalization out of a cohort of 13, and that's reproducing itself across the board. So this vaccine, the vaccines we're using are protecting people from severe disease, illness and death, hospitalizations and death. So vaccines still are essential to winning this battle of the pandemic, and are protecting our senior population. With regards to your second question, what was it?
About the potential boost. You remember there's been a lot of
boosters.
About boosters.
Yeah, we're still not, we're not being advised to give boosters at this point, but that is definitely in the conversations that they're having at the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices at the FDA. And the companies that have developed the vaccines have been developing boosters as well. So, but at this point, we're not being instructed to do that. And for the seniors, I might point out, who were among the first in the cohorts that were vaccinated, because we're seeing this real good protection from severe disease, hospitalization, and death. It's showing that we are having some long-lasting protection, because as you remember, we started the vaccination rollout in January. So
great. One of our well-read members, and it can be a short answer, wanted to know why we ended up with an mRNA vaccine versus a killed virus like we've done with flu in the past.
Those are the ones that were able to get the phase trials done in an appropriate amount of quicker. And the mRNA vaccinations were being investigated because they were felt to be able to confer better immune protection, antibody response, more robust antibody response. So, and luckily that's true, has been true, and is true, because we rarely have, if ever, have a vaccine that'll give you 95% coverage. You know, we're doing really well if we have a flu shot that gives you 70% coverage. So thank God that we've got over 90%, because then the little bit of loss that we're seeing with this is protecting our seniors and other people who are at risk.
Sure. Another question. I have a family member who's 80 years old in very good health. She's back out in the community, only wears a mask in public places when she's forced to, like at the doctor's office. Do you have any advice on what I can say to her to convince her to wear a mask in all public places? Does she need to be wearing a mask in all public outdoor places as well as indoor?
So what I'd say is that ventilation has been shown to help improve, protect in a protective way, because, and so outdoor spaces typically are considered to be less likely to be places where you would become infected. However, if you're in a space that's crowded and you're not able to get that distance, the mask is really going to help. And masking really does help with the small particle size infected particles that cause people to become infected. For sure, indoors, I would recommend wearing a mask. And if you're outdoors, if you're not able to protect yourself from somebody's cough or sneeze, I would wear a mask.
So just to reiterate, even if you think everybody is vaccinated in your group, but there are multiple households, wearing a mask indoors at a meeting of 15 people is a good idea.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions that I can maybe not see on my screen?
One comes in from Henry. Can we add a Pfizer BioNTech booster, if needed, to a Moderna-based vaccine? Does it matter if we mix and match them a little bit?
It's not recommended that they be mixed. And when we are given guidance to start doing boosters, I'm sure they'll address that very situation, since there's been a large amount of Moderna used.
Okay. And if there are other questions, you can either use the raise hand function or you can kind of wave and we'll scroll through. I would like to take a moment, though, just to say, Dr. Walks, thank you so much for your service and for clearly your devotion to this work. I know it's been particularly hard on the healthcare professionals, and just we so appreciate it. So just we salute you. Thank you so much for all the help and all the work on this front.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We all know that one of your major challenges, Desmar, is going to be the public messaging, as I've already alluded to. Yeah. in addition to what you've said, are there things seniors can do to spread this message? Can we tell them we'll get all infected if you don't, everybody wear a mask, play the sickness old age card? I mean, give me some hints.
I'm not going to give you the words to say, but you know, you can put a word out there for us. Yeah,
that's right. You have
I think
to
that's called
that,
people shaming, isn't it, Tom?
Yes, every word. None of us have been in the public place, but every word she utters may come back to haunt her. So that's why she's very, very careful. Yeah, I don't see any reason that you can't just say, hey, protect me. I don't care if you yourself get infected, but I have no shame in saying I'm the one who needs protection.
It looks like we have Mart. I think you waved your hand, you or Sue.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. I went to my GP yesterday and we had the conversation about this, and he has been seeing a great uptick in COVID cases. And his statement, and this is a line we could use to shame people, his statement, it was 100% of the newly infected people had not had their shots. He has not seen a person with shots with COVID at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use the statement almost all because we do know that there's some people who have had a vaccination and have gotten it. But yeah, it is, as the CDC director said, Dr. Walensky, it is a pandemic now of the unvaccinated, but we are seeing some vaccinated folks who have mild disease and don't end up in the hospital, but because they have the mild disease, they, you know, have the potential of passing it on to somebody else. So,
yeah, we have one of our viewers is just that. Dr. Honeycutt is a victim of the second round and got it, fortunately, very mild.
Yeah.
You get 10 words, Bob.
Have to unmute.
You know, we can't do that as doctors, right?
But and Bob, you might unmute and say something, but the big point is with minimal activity, Bob still got infected after vaccine. So it's easy to be transmitted, as you've already illustrated.
Yeah.
That would be my message to my friends, is that if I got it and I already had both shots in January and I got COVID about a month ago, then we ought to keep those masks on till the cows come home, I guess.
Yes.
Because
can I get the press to come talk to you?
Sure.
Yes, I'll answer.
Yes, I was very fortunate, but my wife did not get it, and also I have a daughter who had both of her shots and tested positive again. And you know, they're healthy people. I'm reasonably healthy, so it can happen. And I, as you say, I'm very fortunate. I didn't have a severe case.
Because you got the vaccination.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. I'm serious. I'm going to tell the PIO to call you.
Okay. If I can have a control study or whatever, I'd be glad to do whatever I can do.
No, we want testimonials, Bob. That's you can't treat this whole problem, as Dr. Walks will tell you, with logic. You got to use emotion. And that's one. Would you comment, just before we run out of time here, what symptoms might be common in this sort of second wave that may be the Bob Honeycutt symptoms?
Well, some people just have a runny nose, sore throat, a little bit of a fever, cough. Some folks have diarrhea and a lot of fatigue. So we recently put out a letter to the Travis County Medical Society and listed those symptoms and said, think COVID, you know, because again, we were all like, yoo-hoo, waving our masks, ready to go back to new normal, and the variants here. So that there are some that say they have a headache, loss of taste and smell. But there are some people that don't have that and have the other symptoms that you can get with, you know, common cold, RSV, and and they don't think that they've got COVID. And that's, you know, we need to look and see. The good thing is that testing's available. You can buy home tests now. I'm fully vaccinated. I've got two twin granddaughters whose birthday was last week. I had the sniffles because of allergies, ran to the CVS on the way home a couple days before their birthday party and swabbed my nose because I wanted to get the results quickly, and then PCR'd myself, you know, all that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is we can get testing done so quickly now, and it's so readily available, that that's the thing to do. And, you know, wear a mask, wash your hands, social distance, and let's get through this, you know.
And Dr. Walks, responding to a couple of posts in the chat section. So bottom line is we know certainly, you know, even if you've been vaccinated, because of this variant and because it is a changeable virus, that you still could get infected, though you're likely not to have as much of the response to the disease as you would if you had not been vaccinated. And that could happen anywhere, whether it's here or if you begin traveling again, and you might enter areas that are hotspots or where people are not wearing masks and doing the social distancing and sort of running the due diligence there. So that's really that what we're seeing is that, at least in my interpretation, we're beginning to behave as though, or we've begun to behave as though it's gone away, and it really hasn't fully. And if it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that really with the mask wearing, it's always been my understanding that I wear my mask more to protect others than to protect myself. Is that kind of a safe estimation?
I think it goes both ways, actually. You know, because in medicine, we're wearing them to protect ourselves. And, you know, for the most part, that's been very effective. If you think of all of the men and women who've been caring for patients over the past 18 months, who've been, in a lot of cases, double masking, we've had some people that get sick, but for the most part, their wearing of a mask has protected them too. So certainly did right, you know, up until the time that we had vaccines available. So it goes both ways.
But this is a good question that was also posted in the chat. So even if, say, our seniors group, fully vaccinated, you know, still taking all the precautions, how do we then interact with young people? And what about, you know, vaccinations that might come online for grandchildren? In the interim, should we continue to wear masks around them?
You know, that's a difficult question. Because we do have a segment of our population that's not yet eligible for vaccinations. I would say that, you know, in my case, I had a symptom of allergies, so that's why I checked myself to be sure. And I wore a mask anyway, just to be sure. And right now, that's, you know, it's going to be a judgment call on for everybody. But I think that our children are so precious. And if they're going to be going back to school and they are, I would advise, just as the American Academy of Pediatrics has advised, that children wear masks indoors. And I agree with that. And I'm in alignment with that too.
And then I know we want to be conscious of your time, but it looks like, John, you have a question if you want to unmute and chime in.
Well, our question was, how safe is it to fly if we're taking a 2 or 3 hour flight, or should we scratch that if we can?
Recommendation would be essential travel. You know, the airlines are being really careful. And they are not allowing people to be on the plane without masks. So if you have to fly, wear your mask. And that extra layer of protection in any setting is going to be helpful. And I'm assuming I'm talking to a mostly vaccinated population. So you should be fine if you're wearing that mask.
But you're saying if it's essential travel and if it's just kind of recreational travel, you would skip the trip.
I would right now with this Delta, if you can. You know, it really depends on, you know, how much you're going to be exposing yourself during that traveling activity. And that's going to be something that you'd have to, you know, assess. Where are you going? What's the protection like there? Are you going to be in settings where you're outdoors a lot, or are you going to be in a lot of places where there are lots of crowds? Those types of things factor into that decision.
And any recommendation about a type of mask? So I'd heard of you know, really that the N95s were much more protective. So is that still the case, that that's highly recommended over just your regular disposable?
They are more protective. They may not, I mean, some people don't have availability or don't have those at their disposal. Wearing a face covering or a surgical mask does give you a lot of good protection. It's more important to really assess what your exposures are. So in the hospital setting where people are around aerosolized droplets from or around people who are coughing a lot or that sort of thing, you know, then a mask of that sort's more crucial. But using the surgical masks that we have available will give you protection.
Right. And then I'll just...
I think we need to let Dr. Walks almost catch up with her day again. And for those of you who did not realize that, you know, she literally was nice enough to slip us in when she had all these other catastrophes around her. So with exceptional thanks. And again, if people have other questions, we'll stay on the line and I'll write them down and she'll be happy to answer them later.
Or you can answer them, Tom.
Oh, okay. and I don't have that public responsibility that you do. That's right. But anyway, so many thanks.
It's been fun.
And welcome.
Thank you all. I have dubbed you ambassadors. Tell people to put their mask on, please.
Thank you very much.
Will do. We'll carry the message. Thank you, Dr. Walks.
All right. Bye, y'all. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And folks, do feel free to stay on if you want to ask, because I know that there was a question here about the home test, what that is like. And so I'd like to just see, maybe Tom, you would like to field that one. I know I've had a test, probably a handful of other people have, and they can sort of talk about what that experience was like.
Well, it's still, the only difference in the home test is it's about 75% accurate. You have to pay for it, obviously, as opposed to going to a public site where you don't have to pay for it. That's the general ask. Tommy, you want to comment on any other aspect to it?
Sure. Well, I had one performed at one of the little medical clinics, and it was, so somebody did the swabbing of my sinuses, and it was thorough. I'll just put it that way. So I would think that probably the home test is a little bit more humane as it's self-administered, but it was so worthwhile. It wasn't as extreme as I thought it would be. And it was, I got an answer back in I think about an hour and a half, and it was, yeah, so much more thorough. And so if you have the opportunity, if you really do feel like you need a test, you know, look at one of those testing centers, because it is, you know, certainly worth it, I think, to have a medical professional perform the test for higher accuracy, and you do really get the response pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's the magic thing. Self-administration is not nearly as thorough. And so basically you're giving yourself a less sensitive test. So that's the real thing. We will, if you like, we'll take under advisement the CCV test team to come out to your house. But
Tom, the big problem, I just had two friends in their early 80s who went through this, but they couldn't get to their doctor's office. The doctor was backed up forever. And when they called, the only places that were doing them, the emergency centers, wanted $250 a person for them to have the test.
No, Carol, there's still some public testing centers open, and I'll make a point we publicize that through CCB. So you're 100% right. You can spend a bundle of money, but there's still some public testing centers open that are free.
Yeah, well, we need to know where they are because they finally got into their doctor's office. But
got it. I will publicize that. Okay. Other questions?
Just feel free to unmute and pop in if you have a question. I'm scanning right now to see if there's any raised hands.
One other thing just to throw in before John speaks up again is we're going to publish a nice little table that specifically gives an answer to all the questions people seem to have about, hey, I don't want the vaccine because. And it's nice thing right out of the New England Journal of Medicine. We'll put that in the next newsletter. And the advantage of it is it gives you a way to answer, because as you've been told, you don't confront people saying, why in the world haven't you got it? You say, what about it bothers you that you don't want to help me be safe? But don't be confrontational. Just say, what is it? And then find the answer. And about half the time they'll actually believe you. But we'll put some question and answer sections in the next newsletter very soon. John?
Go ahead.
How good is the oxygen thing that you use at home, the little finger thing for oxygen, in telling you that you're pretty okay?
It's not a good idea. And the reason, I mean, it's a good idea in the sense it's measuring it. But if you're feeling that bad and have COVID and have symptoms, you need to be communicating with the doctor, not trying to run your own show, which I know you would never do, of course.
But the symptoms are not just a sore throat.
Right. But the whole point being that if you're feeling bad enough, you don't want to screen with an oxygen saturation. What they're talking about is called an oximeter. And normal for people in our age is about 95% or above. But if you're sick, communicate with your medical doctor if you want to do that as a monitoring, but only after you know that you have the disease and after you've been evaluated. Because remember, there are some treatments that modify the disease there, most of which a lot of the ones that have been publicized, of course, don't modify, but there are medications as outpatients that modify the severity of the disease after you've reached a certain point.
Right. Can I ask a question too, or have the Cohanes reached their limit?
Well, you got to go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. I want to talk. So I'm the one who asked John to ask, how safe is it to fly? And I guess here's the dilemma I'm feeling, and that is if we follow the best guidance, we will remain hermits. And so, for example, I won't ask about flying, indoor gatherings. If we want to get together with 6 to 8 people and we mask, but we take the masks off to have a bite to eat, are y'all doing that? Or have you decided during the variant surge, no more food? I mean, what's your? It's almost a gut feel kind of a question.
Well, and you'll get different answers from different folks, so that's the given, number one. Yes. But part of the risk of contracting it is the duration of your exposure. So in the scenario you've talked about, yes, come in the house, wear your mask. Number two, it's okay to eat without a mask, obviously, but you're not going to eat right on top of each other. If you're, rather than 6 people around one little small table, you'd be spread out. So it's okay, but keep your duration of your exposure is important just as much as trying to wear the mask where that's appropriate. Again, this is in the setting where everybody has been vaccinated that you've just described. And I hope that answers, but you can ask 10 people and you'll get 6 answers.
Well, I really appreciate that, because the spreading out is a reminder. The duration of the exposure suggests to me, okay, so you got a birthday gathering, then you stay masked except for the cake. You don't have a full meal. That would be one thing that would simplify things. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? It's interesting, you know, Dr. Walks is brand new on her job. She was the public health director of Bastrop County for 15 years, I believe, before moving up to the big city here. But as evidenced by, at least I hope you appreciate it, she's been in the real world. She understands some of the practical aspects of it, in addition to being a public health expert.
It was very impressive, very helpful.
Thanks for your contribution of having the disease, Bob.
It's my pleasure, Tom.
All right, well, folks.
Not wearing a mask this morning at our 15-person meeting.
Well, again, we don't want to prolong this, but if you have questions, it's just teamofcourse@gmail. And again, thanks all of you for joining in. I hope you felt like time was well spent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, folks. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.